Good morning. It is Friday, February the 8th, and this is The Drill. And thank you very much. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States of America today, because I'm the only one that makes the presumption for the status quo. I'm the only one in the United States of America that realizes that it is not my stand on the issues that makes me conservative. Speaking to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers. And you and I have been brainwashed. We've been brainwashed into believing we're conservative when in reality we are reactionary. Decades ago, the Democrats, with the acquiescence of Republicans, set the table, politically speaking, by deliberately redefining political identity. The Democrats decided that one's positions on the issues are what define the political parties. Naturally, the Democrats decided what the issues should be. The news departments reinforced this decision, and the Republicans paid the consequences. The Democrats created an action-reaction political dynamic, with Republicans playing the role of reactionary. In reality, voters are either left or right as a matter of fact, not a matter of opinion. The most essential political fact of reality is change. You and I are defined by our attitudes about change, and change is indicated when there's an improvement to the status quo. Unless there's something obviously better than what we have now, we stay the course. That's realistic, normal, conservative. Constant change in the blind search for perfection is idealistic, left, liberal, socialist. And defining voters by the issues turns everything on its head. Progress and moving forward take precedence over common sense. Change, not because it's better, but for the sake of change. Act first, think later, trial and error. So I've been thinking about this. Because I'm very critical of Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, Liz Wheeler, all of the pundits that are on the radio now. Very critical of them because they spend most of their time talking about the left. And for number one, and number two is that they spend a lot of time making predictions instead of discussing morality and ethics. But I brought up the idea, okay, if they're not going to talk about the left, then what is it that they should talk about? And it seems to me that what they need to talk about is culture, how the left affects our culture. Because ultimately, the battle that goes on between right and left in this country isn't going to be solved in Washington, D.C. or any state capital. It's going to be solved at ground level and work its way up. It's you and me. Okay, and what affects us more than anything else is not so much politics as it is culture. The way we are expected to think and act, behave, etc. What it is that's considered acceptable. What kind of behavior is considered acceptable? As an example, I had a situation yesterday where I was at the gym and I'm on the treadmill, and there's a lady on the treadmill who had deliberately left one of the doors open so that the outside air can get in. This is 5 o'clock in the morning, Pasadena, California. It's 40 degrees. We don't need that damn door open. It's 40 fucking degrees outside. We don't need to have a breeze blowing in here. That's bullshit, right? She didn't ask anybody's permission. She just opened the door and propped it open. So I go over and I shut the door. Then she gets off her treadmill and she goes and opens it. And then I closed it and then she opened it again. And I let it go at that particular point. But she leaves a few minutes later. And on my way out, after I gotten my workout done and shower and whatnot, the guy at the front desk wants to talk to me. Big surprise. Big surprise. She had obviously gone to him to file some sort of a complaint, and of course he wants to now give me some kind of a lecture on how to be sociable. Because more and more in our country, that's the issue. The issue du jour is two things, sociability and power. So she apparently thought this was a powerful move, that instead of coming to me and doing the correct thing, the ethical thing, the moral thing, and talking to me about it and saying, hey, maybe there's a way we can work this out, this issue out or something. No, she wants to do the power play and go get somebody, go get a champion, go get somebody that's going to fight her battle for her. And so that's what his job was. Well, I knew, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure it out. So on my way out the door, he's trying to get my attention, and I just blow him off. I ignore him and I leave. But I know full well that when I come in today, he's going to probably be right at me as soon as I walk in the door. And that's exactly what happened. He's at me, I ignore him. He's calling me by name. I ignore him and I go straight to the locker room. Go in the locker room, he follows me. Right? So he wants to of course, he wants to lecture me and tell me how to be sociable, you shouldn't, argue over this or whatever the issue is, or she's angry at you, or she's filed a complaint against you. I thought you'd just like to know. So he's going to, of course, pretend to be my friend when in reality what he's trying to do is show me that who's in charge, who's the boss here, who's the leader, who's the change agent. Only he's not a boss, he's not a leader, he's not a change agent. And as I told him, he's not my father. And I'm not going to listen to whatever he had to say. So he got rattled about it. He issued a few threats and went ahead and left. So later on, he apologized and claimed that actually all he wanted to do was apologize for the woman on her behalf to me. It was a lie. I knew it. He knew it. But I went ahead and accepted the apology, and we went from there. But the point is that it's the psychological games that we all have to go through each and every day, over and over and over again. Every time you're dealing with somebody, you've got to be dealing and concerned with the psychological games. So the question is how do we end that? How does that come to an end? Are we doomed? Are we going to have to spend the rest of our lives getting up in the morning thinking, oh God, I can't bear to go on one more fucking day? Because that's all it does. Power is illusory. Okay, it's just a pain in the ass to have to go through each and every day like it's a fucking chess game. If I move there, he's going to move there. If I say this, he'll say that. If I do this, he does that. Who wants that? Who needs it? There's no point to it. There's no winners. The only way there's a winner is if you're dealing ethically. If you're stopping and thinking things through. What's the right thing to do in this particular situation? So, but that's the way the left operates, is they get in your psyche. They put things on television, in the movies, and they have various slogans that they like to use. We will empower you. That one slogan is a very powerful slogan if you're not thinking about it, because it suggests to you that power is what's most important in life. And then what happens is that when somebody like she treats me the way she did, it pulls a power play, then I'm supposed to be baited into responding in kind. Okay, and that's the one thing that all conservatives can do, is avoid that by what I call don't spread the disease. If you catch a cold, the best thing you can do, you can't cure the cold, you can't cure the people that gave you the cold, you can't fix them, you can't fire them, you can't kill them. The best thing you can do is don't spread it. Stay home from work, or if you've got to go to work, cover your cough, cover your sneeze, right? You don't get on the bus and sneeze on the person next to you. You try to nip it in the bud. And the same thing goes with the psychosocial BS that's perpetrated by the left each and every day. You got to listen to yourself. That's the best thing Ayn Rand ever said. Listen to yourself. When you've got that little nagging doubt, you hear something, you see something, and there's something in the back of your mind that says, I don't know. Don't dismiss that. Find out why you're bothered. If you come to figure out that it's something on you, you're just in a bad mood or whatever, fine. But you may come to figure out that there's a damn good reason why you're bothered by it. Because it's crap. Okay? Don't spread the disease. There's one of the things that's going around now is calling people boss. Usually, I haven't seen women get called boss, but it's always men that do that, and they never women that'll call me boss. But I walk into places, I deliver food to go to various restaurants, and very often it's usually a young person, somebody 18 to 25 years old, very often Hispanic. So maybe it's a Hispanic cultural thing, I don't know, but they call me boss. Hey, boss, here you go, boss. Thanks, boss. My name's not boss, but this is a hallmark of the left, is informality. Conservatives, true conservatives, appreciate formality. Here you go, sir. Here you go, mister. Not boss. You want to call your friends boss? Have fun. Knock yourself out. If they put up with it, that's up to them. Now, what can I do about it? Joe Blow calls me boss. One of the things I can do is I can confront him. And I can confront him either directly or indirectly. Right? Tell him, hey, my name's not boss. Don't call me boss. But very often that's awkward to do because I'm not on my turf. If I was at home and somebody walks in the door, calls me boss, I'd get in their ass so bad it'd make their head spin. They would, not only would they never call me boss again, they never would call anyone boss. But that's on my turf. But when I'm on somebody else's property, I got to have some respect. Okay, so there's not a lot I can do to get people to quit calling me boss. But what I can do, with absolute certainty, is refuse to spread the disease. I simply refuse to call other people boss. It's tempting. Sounds hip, doesn't it? Sounds hip and inside. Hey, boss. Right? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Hey, boss. Don't. There's no reason to. It's change, another example of change for the sake of change. So, when I come back, I'm going to be reading from the Ayn Rand lexicon, and after that, we'll see how it goes. And thank you very much. The Ayn Rand lexicon. You have the concepts of the day. Today's is existent. The building block of man's knowledge is the concept of an existent, of something that exists, be it a thing, an attribute, or an action. Since it is a concept, man cannot grasp it explicitly until he's reached the conceptual stage. But it is implicit in every percept. To perceive a thing is to perceive that it exists, and man grasps it implicitly on the perceptual level, i.e. he grasps the constituents of the concept existent, the data which are later to be integrated by that concept. It is this implicit knowledge that permits his consciousness to develop further. It may be supposed that the concept existent is implicit even on the level of sensations, if and to the extent that a consciousness is able to discriminate on that level. A sensation is a sensation of something, as distinguished from the nothing of the preceding and succeeding moments. A sensation does not tell man what exists, but only that it exists. The implicit concept existent undergoes 3 stages of development in man's mind. The first stage is a child's awareness of objects, of things, which represents the implicit concept entity. The second and closely allied stage is the awareness of specific particular things which can be recognized and distinguished from the rest of his perceptual field, which represents the implicit concept identity. The third stage consists of grasping relationships among these entities by grasping the similarities and differences of their identities. This requires the transformation of the implicit concept entity into the implicit concept unit. And that is the concept of the day, existent, from the Ayn Rand lexicon. So, and this is all very important because there's going to be people, particularly on the left, that are going to try to make philosophical arguments along the lines of that reality doesn't exist, and that knowledge doesn't exist. Okay, and this is why I read from the Ayn Rand lexicon to reinforce the idea that of what it is that we already know axiomatically. Because you're going to get those people that are going to try and cast a doubt in your mind about these things. And the way they do it is not by telling you flat out reality doesn't exist, but by suggesting it. Robin Williams used to have a comedy bit where he say, reality, what a concept. And the suggestion there is that, well, maybe, reality maybe, and won't come out and say reality no, because then they get laughed off the planet. They just say reality maybe, or how do we know? How do we know? How do we know what's real? Well, we all know by the same way, by the evidence of our senses. That's how we know. But when they do that, they're lying. Anybody that says, gee, how do we know? He knows how we know. He knows the same way everyone else does. They're lying. Or, as I like to put it, this a little bit more gentle, they're creating fiction. So, but anyways, that was the Ayn Rand lexicon, and we'll see what I'm going to read when I get back in a minute. Thank you very much. Welcome back. Out of the Ashes, about American culture and restoring American culture. And we were talking about what are the things that the author is talking about, things that need to be done to restore American culture. And one of the things is understanding the meanings of words. And another thing was lying, refusing to lie. And now the third one is called learn to speak and read. Imagine someone with a peculiar visual handicap. He's not colorblind exactly. He can see the three primary colors and the three secondary colors. He can see red. He often sees red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. We'll give him also white and black and brown. But that is all he can see. He has no other words for color. If you asked him to describe the color of a fox, he would say it's red, red like an apple. Such a person would be completely incapable of appreciating a painting by the little dyer, the affectionate nickname the Italians gave to Jacopo Robusti, Tintoretto. He would see blocks of the elementary colors on a billboard, but he would make nothing of the bright burst of white, kind of gold over the head of Christ as he leans over like a priest to give the holy bread to the apostle nearest to him. In Tintoretto's Last Supper, his eyes would register the light, but his mind would not see its qualities. He would be like the people in Orwell's 1984 who are to be rendered incapable of rebellion because they would be incapable of independent thought. And they would be incapable of independent thought because of the deliberate obliteration of real English, to be replaced by newspeak, with all shades of meaning reduced to simple negatives and simple amplifiers. What do we need all those words for anyway, says Syme, the linguist, to Winston Smith. Why should we have words like fine, splendid, excellent, and the rest, when good plus good and double plus good will do? Syme is a nihilist with a passion about linguistic destruction that borders on the religious. Smith says to himself that Syme knows too much and that will prove dangerous to him. Sure enough, there comes a day when Syme no longer shows up for work. If our language is inane and empty, our thoughts will be inane and empty too. Garbage in, garbage out. My students write badly not because teachers in high school never made them write papers. They've written plenty of papers, far too many in fact. They have absorbed the newspeak and cannot rid themselves of it. They do not need to learn a second language. They need to learn their own language in all its richness. The only way to do that is to read good books, books written before the current rage of newspeak. Let me give an example of what English was. I'm not choosing it because of the renown of the author of the work. In fact, I'm choosing it because the work is not even meant to be great. It is meant to be ordinary. The passage describes a stage in the career of the Renaissance painter Filippino Lippi. Quote, at Rome, the antique inspired him, not as an historian, a humanist, or a scholar, but as a painter and a poet who discovered in it new elements of delight. The antique appeared to him as an inexhaustible source of the picturesque. The rich ornamentation with its foliage, garlands, masks, trophies, was like a new toy in his hand. He even enriched it still more with whatever he could find of Oriental luxury, Moorish, Chinese. Quote, "It is marvelous," unquote, writes Vasari, quote, "to see the strange fancies which he has expressed in his painting. He was always introducing vases, footgear, temple ornaments, headdresses, strange trappings, armor, trophies, scimitars, swords, togas, cloaks, and an array of things so various and so beautiful that we owe him today a great and eternal obligation for all the beauty and ornamentation that will be thus added to our art," unquote. That passage cannot be written now. The language is too immersed in things, the specific objects of interest and beauty which Filippino Lippi gazed upon and studied as a child in a curiosity shop where everything fascinates because it is, quote, "original, counter, spare, strange," quote, unquote, to use Hopkins' happy line. But the passage is also too sensitive to the spiritual stage of Lippi's very being. The painter is not labeled and tagged for his politics, or for his technical achievements, or for his progress as a careerist, or for his supposedly unorthodox or transgressive depictions, or for the seamy side of his personal life, about the only things that would interest the academic world now. The author is trying to reveal to us something of the man himself, which also is something of the image of God within him. His article ends with the words whose delicacy and precision are really meant to present the artist in full to our imagination. Quote, "Of the generation immediately preceding the great works of Michelangelo and Leonardo, of that restless and subtle, complex and nervous generation of Botticelli and Cosimo Rosselli, he is perhaps the most varied, the most gifted, and the most lovable," unquote. I did want to make a remark here that basically what he's getting at when he's saying that the words that were written that he described about the artist at Rome, the antique inspired him, blah, 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 is conceptual. That's really the essence of what he's trying to get at, and Ayn Rand was trying to get at in terms of good writing and bad writing. Some of those beautiful writing, if you look at the writing of the Constitution of the United States, when you look at the way that George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, for that matter, who was that? He was the ex-slave, and during the Civil War, and who was always agitating and rather pain in the rear, I suppose, in a good way. But anyways, even the way he was expressing himself, when you read what they're doing, it's hard to understand because it's conceptual. And what the left has replaced in our society, the conceptual with, is verbal picture painting and storytelling. Okay? That's what you're expected to do when you communicate with people. Listen to the way people communicate with you. Very often when you're asking them, well, how was work today? Instead of telling you it was tough, it was gratifying, right? Using concepts, they'll tell you a story. Well, I went to work, and as soon as I get to work, my boss comes up to me and says X, Y, Z. Well, and I said blah, 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 blah. And it goes on from there. And at the end of whatever it is this person is telling you, you have absolutely no idea what they're saying. What are they trying to communicate here? Are they trying to communicate frustration? Are they trying to communicate celebration? What? You don't know. And verbal picture painting is very often about using slang. So I remember hearing a advertisement, a commercial on the radio for a people that were used to be in the IRS, and they're going to help you deal with your tax problems. I think they're lawyers, but at least accountants anyways. And so they were, there was a guy that was being interviewed, ostensibly interviewed, a regular Joe that had some tax problems, and he was describing how this company had helped him. And every way that he was explaining a situation, he used verbal picture painting. He said, I was in over my head that the IRS was going to hang me out to dry. Those kinds of things. Those are verbal picture painting. And the problem with them is that they're imprecise. Hang me out to dry means what? What does that mean? I was in over my head. What does that mean? imprecise. We don't know. It could have several different meanings to it. It has a kind of, I suppose, a poetic quality to it, but it's imprecise. But the point is that when everybody starts talking that way, writing that way, we get used to it. And then when we actually are put in a position where we're expected to read and understand things that are conceptual, we struggle. So, like what the author is saying here, where he says, learn to read. And that's what he means, is find things to read. Find once a day. And find something that is conceptual in nature, rather than something that is going to be telling a story or painting verbal pictures. So, at this point, that brings me to the conclusion of another episode of The Drill. And until next time, probably on Monday, I thank you for listening, and have a great day.